In a rapidly evolving digital landscape where cryptocurrencies have captured the world's attention, one question remains at the forefront. How do we bring crypto to the masses? Hey there, welcome back to Crypto Savvy. Today, we delve into the visionary insights of one of the key figures in the crypto space, Vitalik Buterin, the co-founder of Ethereum. In an interview with Coinbase, Vitalik Buterin sheds light on Ethereum 2, scalability, and the path ahead.
I think I'll ask a question that's on a lot of people's minds, which is, how are things progressing towards Ethereum 2 and Serenity? And maybe you can give us a timely update for the community on how you feel it's going, and what should we know?
Sure. So Ethereum 2 is this big, sprawling effort to mainly make two upgrades to Ethereum. One of them is switching the consensus from proof of work to proof of stake, which we believe to be much more energy efficient, much less tree killing, require much less issuance and all of those things, and at the same time more secure than proof of work. So this is actually something I wrote a blog post about, like one of the most recent ones on vitalik.ca talks about this. And the other big piece is sharding, which is a scalability upgrade. That basically means that you don't need every node to process every transaction anymore. You kind of split up the load much more. And this way we could increase the blockchain's throughput from around 15 transactions a second to many thousands or tens of thousands of transactions per second. So the Ethereum 2 roadmap is split into different stages or parts.
In the next question, Vitalik shares his best estimate of when we can expect to see proof of stake, scalability, and the implementation of optimistic rollups. Let's hear what he has to say.
How do you think about, what's the time frame that you think, in your best estimate, that we will now be live on ETH2, we'll have proof of stake, we'll have the scalability, the optimistic rollup, and all those things that you feel like would deliver the next level? So when do you think that'll happen? Best guess.
So ZK rollups, as I mentioned, they're here already. It's just an ecosystem challenge of when they get implemented and widely adopted. Optimistic rollups, so ZK rollups can support payments and a couple of other applications. Optimistic rollups can support the full EVM more easily. So those are already on testnet. I'm expecting them to be on mainnet somewhere between 1 to 3 months from now, depending on how lucky the implementation teams are and how many snags they run into. ETH2 beacon chain, obviously extremely soon. There's literally zero things that need to be done by us. It's just a matter of when people deposit and when that number gets up to 500,000. The Ethereum sharding, 1 to 1.5 years, and then the merge probably 1 to 2 years or so.
Vitalik also discussed the challenges and considerations surrounding the development of next-generation blockchains.
I'm curious, how do you think about it inside the Ethereum Foundation? I know that there's a number of different kind of, I call them like next-generation blockchains, right, that people are working on, and we've got Dfinity and Polkadot and Cosmos and Algorand, and ETH2 is one of those. Do you all think about it as kind of, I think, and by the way, I think many of us were probably hoping that something this year would have been launched, and some of those did launch, but they, we haven't seen maybe as much progress as people were hoping. But these are hard problems; they take a long time. So, do you all inside the Ethereum Foundation think of it as like we're in a race to kind of do this, or is it more like safety and good process, and it's more like taking our time? I'm just curious how you all think of it internally.
And I think getting to having a successful, blockchain with good features and good adoption is not just a matter of tech. It's also a matter of ecosystem and community. And even Ethereum itself kind of suffers from this a little bit. If you look at the ZK rollups, right? The ZK rollups, they're technologically great. It's amazing tech. It exists now. It exists on mainnet. And so the Ethereum blockchain today is fully technically capable of processing, 4,000 payments a second if people are up to it. But ZK rollups are, they're getting some adoption, but it has been a fairly slow climb. And the reason for that is basically that it's not just the tech that needs to get out the door. It's also just people needs to actually go and implement it. Wallets needs to go and support it. And people needs to adjust their workflows for it. People need to get used to it and all of these things. And so like one of the trends that we've been seeing both in the Ethereum L2 space and even in the kind of quote ETH killer space is that a lot of them are basically trying to adopt the EVM, right? Like a lot of the ETH killers are trying, like maybe a few years ago, they were marketing about how they were so much better than the EVM, and now they're basically marketing about how they're including the EVM. And even the Ethereum Layer 2 projects, right? Like the reason why people are excited about optimistic rollups so much more than Plasma or Channels or even the ZK family, for example, is because they can just support existing EVM contracts.
As the crypto industry continues to evolve, the question of mergers and acquisitions among different blockchains arises.
I do feel like there's so many new blockchains that got created at one point, and usually when industries are first starting, there's kind of massive fragmentation, tons of different competitors, and then over time they consolidate down. And so, do you anticipate there'll be any kind of like mergers or acquisitions or something like that of these different blockchains to bring some of these teams together as the industry consolidates?
That's a fun one. We haven't seen like a coin or merger before, right? Like,
yeah,
I guess the challenge is that just requires a lot of coordination, and it's a type of coordination that the teams or that decentralized communities are not naturally good at, but maybe someone will do it successfully and show people the way. I think even within the Ethereum ecosystem, there's definitely like families of projects that could easily do better if they kind of combined into a single one.
yeah.
On the on the ETH killer side, like one thing that I do foresee happening is I imagine some of them are going to continue to try to pivot from being ETH killers to being kind of ETH satellites. So basically, I mean, some of them are doing this already, right? Like they're talking about how, oh, we have this amazing system and we have a bridge and it's like right beside the Ethereum ecosystem and you can bounce back and forth. And if you want to be a more secure ETH satellite, then you can become a rollup, and the tools for being a rollup are going to become kind of much easier over time. And then you benefit from kind of Ethereum's security layer, which would be nice. And so, I mean, I do see kind of some portion of them going down that path, and some portion are definitely going to just try building their own ecosystem, and they're going to specialize in doing something unique and interesting that Ethereum does not do. And I think like those are the most interesting ones, right? Like don't just try to become a clone and have 10% better developer experience or whatever. Like either do something that the Ethereum community is not willing to do. That could mean, having a base layer with very activist governance that does things like, protocol changes and like DAO forks and having built-in price feeds and oracles or whatever, and just like throw the entire kitchen sink on like a big governance blockchain. It could mean doing something interesting with formal verification, like the Tezos vision, for example, like I thought was interesting in that regard. Doing something interesting in terms of like aiming to zero knowledgeify the entire thing, like what Mina has been doing. So those kinds of projects I think are interesting and can survive. But basically, like I think if you're something other than Ethereum, you need to have a story for why your thing deserves to kind of exist and be used in the context of an ecosystem where Ethereum and where it's going already exists. And I mean, that's true of Ethereum as well, right? Like Ethereum itself needed to have a story of why Ethereum deserves to exist in the context of where Bitcoin was and where Bitcoin is going. And that's something where I think we have actually managed to kind of get over that hump. So I mean, I'm confident there will be some projects that manage to do it.
The discussion now shifts towards scalability and the vital role it plays in bringing crypto to the masses. Let's hear what Vitalik has to say.
How do we get crypto to be used by a billion people every day, right? How do we get it to be internet scale? And I think there's a lot of lessons from the internet, right? We talked about one of them already, the move from dial-up to broadband is kind of the scalability that we talked about earlier with sharding and proof of stake and everything, roll-ups. There was also, of course, privacy had to be added to the internet, right? So it went from HTTP to HTTPS. and then you could start putting in your credit card and feel more secure online. And then I'd say the usability was another big piece where like they went from just IP addresses, machine readable addresses to the DNS system, so you could type a human readable name, a domain name. And I know like the Ethereum name system has started doing some work there. Maybe you can just, zooming out, kind of give us your vision for the next 5 years in crypto or 10 years. Like, how do we get 1 billion people using this every day?
So, as you mentioned, scalability, I think, is a hugely important part of this. There's like big companies that would love to do major things in crypto, but they're holding off now because they realize that like if they were to do that, then they themselves would basically like single-handedly triple transaction fees and essentially just make their own product useless just by existing. And so if either scalability happens or scalability gets to the point where there's a credible story that it will happen within a year, then I think there's a much higher chance that we're going to see large enterprises just jump in and start doing useful things on chain as a result. So that's one side of things. And then the other side of things, I think, is that if we can push transaction fees down from the status quo where they're like somewhere between, 10 cents and $10, depending on which day of the week and like what thing it is that you're doing, down to the point where they're between, 0.05 cents and 5 cents, then we can unlock a lot more different kinds of activity, right? So we can unlock a lot of non-financial applications. We can unlock a lot more usage of ENS. We can unlock a lot more micropayment related things. Once we have scaling, that becomes possible. Once we have privacy, a lot of things become more possible. And also scaling and privacy work together, right? Because privacy, unfortunately, comes with the cost that privacy preserving transactions are like 10 to 30 times more expensive than regular transactions. If those fees go down to 10 cents, then privacy can become much more mainstream, which would be awesome. So that's a big side of things. The other side, I think like wallet security, once again, is really important for scaling because people are just not going to, mass adopt this kind of write 24 words on a piece of paper. And if that paper accidentally goes in the garbage, then, so do your life savings kind of approach, right? Like it's like, you're just not going to be able to convince like 1.5 billion people to kind of go figure out how to use that entire path. And I know, even among my own friends, like they find that entire procedure scary, and there's a lot of edge cases that they find scary. I guess in the crypto space, obviously just savings and payments are kind of the original one, and they're this big thing that's definitely valuable to a lot of people. Again, if you're in one of these countries that's experiencing hyperinflation, then crypto is really valuable for you. And even if you don't want to like hold money in crypto specifically, or in Bitcoin or ETH specifically, like there's DAI and there's USDC and there's all of these assets that you can use as well. Payments are used, and international payments, crypto continues doing those really well. So and in general, kind of I think the decentralized finance space is increasing the potential for what you can do there. So I think we'll also see just a lot of small things kind of popping up, and it's an ecosystem and it's a network, and you have all of these different parts that just grow independently, and they kind of all mutually support each other.
In conclusion, Vitalik Buterin highlights the importance of scalability, usability, and user-defined wallets in driving widespread adoption of crypto. Stay tuned for more updates from the world of crypto.